On February 4, 1997, Louise Woodward called 911 in Newton, Massachusetts to report a baby who was barely breathing. The infant was 8-month-old Matthew Epen. Matthew was comatose when he arrived at Children's Hospital in Boston. His injuries included a skull fracture, subdural hematoma, bleeding in the space between the skull and brain, and retinal hemorrhaging, bleeding at the back of his eyes. He had massive brain damage. Doctors concluded he was a victim of shaken baby syndrome. Woodward, a 19-year-old from England working as an au pair during a gap year after high school, was caring for Matthew and his 2-year-old brother when the baby became unresponsive. She was quickly accused of violently shaking Matthew and was arrested on February 5, 1997. Matthew was taken off life support on February 9, 1997. Woodward, who denied hurting the baby, was charged with first-degree murder in March. Woodward's October 1997 trial became a sensation in both the United States and the United Kingdom, where trials were not televised at the time. The prosecution stated Matthew had 3 particularly significant injuries: subdural hematoma, bleeding at the back of his eyes, and brain swelling. According to expert medical testimony, this triad of symptoms was proof Matthew had been violently shaken. The prosecution also said Matthew's head had been slammed on a hard surface. Prosecutors accused Woodward of preferring fun in Boston to childcare duties. Matthew's parents, Drs. Deborah and Sunil Epen, felt that Woodward, who'd left a previous au pair job that had an 11 p.m. curfew, often stayed out too late. Woodward's defense contended that aggravation of an older accidental injury had caused Matthew's death. The defense's medical experts argued that Matthew's skull fracture showed signs of healing, so the injury had been sustained weeks before. Expert testimony also declared the blood clots from Matthew's brain were 3 weeks old, and the baby's wrist had been broken 2 weeks before February 4th. The defense pointed out Matthew had no bruises to indicate he'd been harshly shaken, and said the lack of swelling at the site of his skull fracture meant his head hadn't recently been slammed on something hard. On the stand, Woodward stated she had quickly shaken the baby when he wouldn't wake up but denied being violent. She explained that earlier on February 4th she'd popped Matthew on the bed and laid him on the bathroom floor, countering police claims that she'd said she dropped the baby. The judge approved a defense request to have the jury consider just first- or second-degree murder charges, not manslaughter. The defense hoped this limited choice would result in an acquittal. On October 30, 1997, the verdict arrived. Woodward had been found guilty of second-degree murder. She cried out, "I didn't do anything. Why did they do that to me?" The conviction meant a mandatory life sentence.